Thank you very much, Jorge, for the kind introduction. It is my pleasure to be here presenting this important topic to all of you. As mentioned, I am the current chair of the Association of Food Science and Technologists in Costa Rica, and you will say that I look very young, but our group is comprised of new professionals. So it's very excited because not in all the countries is common that young professionals are actively participating in these kind of initiatives. So it is kind of something that is very nice here. This is my disclosure for our presentation. I do not have any conflict of interest. I'm sorry. Defining the future, which is something that I'm going to talk in this presentation, is something that is not easy. There are multiple ideas that have been shared around the globe on how do we have to address the future. So what I realize is that we all need a common goal. We all have to agree in the goal that we have to look for the future of our food system. This goal is to feed the global population with safe and nutritious foods that comes from a sustainable food system. So that's the goal, and then we're going to see how do we get there. There are different actors on that journey that we have to come along, and we are traditionally used to have three parts: governments, academia, and the industry. But right now, in this area, we have other actors that are having a word in these conversations. Those are NGOs, activists, journalists, influencers, entrepreneurs, and also, of course, the consumers. There are different organizations that are leading the words. Also, there are think tanks, institute, global alliances. They are taking the word on how is the future of food to be defined. It's very important that we all, as scientists, try to get involved in these different organizations, because we have to share the knowledge that we are being producing in our labs and in our universities, so that all the knowledge that we are producing is actually being useful for the future of humanity. There are several drivers for the future. So as I was telling you, there are lots of ideas, so I was trying to decide which ideas I found the most important, and which ideas were the ones that were mentioned mainly by the authors. But the common thing among all these drivers for the future is that they all respond to the Sustainable Development Goals set by the United Nations in 2015. These goals are established to be addressed for 2030. So right now we are in 2020, and I don't know if you know, but by this point we already have some results on the advancements that all the world has made in these Sustainable Development Goals. So I invite you to revise those data, because you can see all the challenges that we have ahead in order to accomplish those goals. So these are the drivers that I'll be talking during the presentation. First, I want to start with sustainability and climate change, because I think this is something that is very important if we have to look for the future. It is actually a common trend among even consumer trends. It's called the non-diet trend that is driving consumer choices right now. So sustainability and climate change is totally related with the food system in two different ways. The first one is that the climate change is affecting directly to food security. And the other one is all the activities that the food system is doing is somehow affecting our natural resources and also having some impact on the climate change. So we are now living in the Anthropocene era, and that means that all the human activities have had irreversible challenge, irreversible impacts on our natural resources. So right now we have to start taking more decisions in order to take care of our resources. So how is the food system affecting food security? How is the climate change affecting food security? With climate change, there are increasing temperatures, changing on precipitation patterns, and greater frequency of some extreme events. So this is affecting the 4 pillars of food security, which is availability, access, utilization, and stability. The World Environmental Organization tweeted, and I mention a tweet because this is also a place where all the information is, important information is being shared, and we all have to look what is happening on Twitter. It says that an estimated 80% of the world's food insecure live in degraded environments exposed to extreme events. So it is clear that we have to do something about reducing climate change so it doesn't affect food insecurity in the world. So for the future, we have several options to decrease these impacts that we are having. First, we can do climate smart agriculture. We can work on the development of agricultural systems, and also something very important, crop diversification. And how do we do that? We can work on global initiatives that have an impact on national policies, and something that is crucial, we have to work with community-based adaptation. So what we need for the future is a profound and radical transformation of the food system. And what we have right now are divergent perspectives on how to address that. Here's where science, that means all of you here in this room, we have an enormous role to play. So here says, science has a particularly important role to play to address the knowledge gaps that remain, to provide the new evidence that might contribute to resolve conflict, and to make critical decisions to foster transitions to sustainable food system for food security and nutrition. We have to think about planetary health when we think about food. And that means that we have to think about the health of the human and the health of our environment as a whole, all at the same time when we are taking food choices. The Eat Lancet Commission report proposed this plate that shows how should be eating in terms of having nutritious foods and sustainable foods in our plates. They are also establishing some boundaries, and they are analyzing which foods are passing those boundaries in order to be sustainable and nutritious. But it's something that is very important to take into consideration is that these planetary boundaries will change from country to country and region by region. We cannot believe that simple plate will be what everyone in the world should eat, because that's impossible to think. For example, one food that will be sustainable in some country might not be sustainable in another. And also, we are seeing that one nutritious foods for some population could also not be as nutritious for others. The other thing is that in this Eat Lancet Commission report, I think they made great work establishing some boundaries for food production sustainability. And I realized that they are not mentioned in the food processing part. So I think that we could all work together on establishing some boundaries for sustainability in food processing. So if we are thinking about sustainability, we need to look for new protein sources, because the protein demand for the global population will increase, and all the projections says that for 2050, the amount of protein that we need is going to be very high. So not only because the sustainability impacts that we have to look for another sources of proteins, but also because we need other sources, because we will need lots of protein. So what the scientific community is working on right now is in plant-based proteins, insects, and algae. This is a picture of protein bars that are made here in Costa Rica with cricket powder. They are made by entrepreneurs in our country. This is an example on how science also has an enormous role to play in this conversation. Solar Foods is a company that developed a protein that they call the purest protein on Earth. It is the protein that is produced from a soil bacteria fed on hydrogen split from water by electricity. Something very interesting about this specific example is that the CEO of the company is a researcher that also works for a university. So this is an example on how academic work could always look for applied solutions for the needs that we have on our food system. In sustainability subject, we also have this challenge. The world is facing right now a plastic crisis. And so for science and food science and technology, this is a plastic challenge. So what do we have to do? We have to look for sustainable solutions, for sustainable packaging for all kinds of products, because right now we have some solutions of sustainable packaging, but only for some types of food products, not for all. Also, we have to address the safety of those products in these new materials, and we have to see how the supply chain will change because of the shelf life diminution that some products could have because of being in these new packagings. Circular economy and life cycle assessment. This is something very important since this European Commission on Science and Knowledge Service, they are working on the environmental impact food labels combining carbon, nitrogen, and water footprints, and the intention is to put that in our food products. So in the future, we will have this thing that where consumer will look to the label for the nutritional composition and also for the environmental footprint of that product. And with those two, the consumer will make its decision. Food loss and food waste. We have been talking with several colleagues during this meeting in these days. That is something that we have to address right now, because we can make a huge difference with simple actions. So in terms of what we have to do as science and technological experts, we can work on improving post-harvest infrastructure and transportation, improve processing and packaging, increase collaboration along the supply chain, training and equipment producers, and also educating consumers. And that includes all of us, because we are also consumers. And we could feel we all have a role to play, and we can take intelligent decisions in order to reduce the waste that we have in our homes. The double burden of malnutrition is something that it is defining our future in our food system, because we have people that doesn't have what to eat, and we have people that is getting obese and overweight. With this obesity and overweight challenge, there is a challenge because consumers are looking to classify foods as healthy or unhealthy. But what we need is to look for healthy diets, and also to understand obesity as a complex subject that includes all lifestyle that we should have. And also, I want to focus on food insecurity, because the numbers are actually very alarming, because food insecurity have been increasing. We should be decreasing the numbers, but it is increasing. So, as mentioned, the United Nations have been monitoring the improvements and the advancements that we have made in the Sustainable Development Goals. And the number 2 says zero hunger. And so in the 2019 report made by FAO, they said that in order to achieve zero hunger, we not only have a challenge. Right now, the name is an immense challenge if we want to address zero hunger. Food security and food science and technology are totally related. If we want to address food security for all, we have to consider the advantages that the food science and technology will give us. And so, for example, food processing and conservation techniques will increase shelf life and making food more available for undernourished people, and that's something that is very important. In the case of wellness, as a consumers, we are all looking for wellness, and we are understanding food not only as the calorie intake that you have during the day, but also as the source of preventive way to be to avoid some health problems. So the science is working very, very hard on these trends. And some of the words are microbiome and personalized nutrition. This is a challenge when consumers are talking about wellness. Consumers right now, they are classifying food as healthy or unhealthy, or real or unreal, natural or unnatural, and that will not take us anywhere. In my experience, in my own experience as a millennial and a food scientist, it's a challenge to be like having this conversation with my friends, because you have to, that's where you realize the importance and the great challenge that we have with science communication. We need to address ways to speak to the public so that they can understand how to make better decisions in terms of food. Technology will drive the future in every aspect of our lives. In some countries right now, they can Alexa can tell you that there's no milk in your fridge, and then for the future, that same technological gadget will tell a drone that there is no milk, and then you will have milk in your door that is coming by a drone, which also comes very quick because it doesn't have to go through the traffic. So the other topics that are going to drive the future are biotechnology and blockchain. And there is a debate on whether if we use technology or not in order to do this food system transformation. In a science perspective, biotechnology will be crucial to address some of the challenges that we have to feed the increase in population. And also blockchain, yesterday there was a talk about this subject, and I think it was very important that they mentioned that when we are trying to use technology, we do not have to be all crazy about the technology, but we have to think about the problem that we are solving with that technology. So the role of food science and technology is to develop healthier food, develop sustainable food process and technologies, decrease the use of non-recyclable materials, reduce food waste, explore new food sources. Food safety is something that the food science has to address, because if we want to make changes, we are going to have new materials, new ingredients, new food, new supply chains, and we have to address and analyze of all the food safety that those products will need. The IUFOST with Peter Learford, well, the authors of the document were Peter Learford and Anne-Marie Hermanson. They wrote this document, which I think is very important, called Global Challenges and the Critical Needs of Food Science and Technology. And they established 7 missions that the food science need to address in order to think for the future. They are saying things like sustainable primary production, designing of sustainable process, the elimination of waste in production, the establishing of complete traceability and product safety, also provide affordable and balanced nutrition to the malnourished, to improve health through diet, and to integrate things like big data and artificial intelligence throughout the food chain. So when we think about creating solutions, here I will share with you some of the main ideas that I think it's the wrap-up of this presentation, and I hope that it will be thought-provoking for you, and you go back to your countries and think about how we can all work in these changes. So the future are multidisciplinary teams. We cannot, as scientists, still be working on our silos. We have to work together and create solutions between multidisciplinary teams. Also, the future are collaboration and co-design. And this is my favorite part, when we as scientists need to work with farmers, indigenous peoples, local leaders, and consumers. And what about co-designing a new research with the consumers, with the indigenous peoples, with the local leaders, and from the beginning, understanding that this science will impact directly to the challenges that the global community is needing. The future is also multiple solutions. So we cannot think that everything that we have to change in the food system is just one solution. There will be multiple solutions that we have to integrate. As takeaways, the food system is facing a lot of challenges, and it is important to integrate the different perspectives of the proposed solutions. Food science and technology play an enormous role on the transition to a more sustainable and nutritious food system. Multidisciplinary science from a collaborating and co-design perspective will be crucial on the creation of a more sustainable food system that leads the way to the future. And to close this presentation, I want to show you some thank you notes that I have, and this will also give you a little background of myself that I didn't put it on the beginning, but at the end of the presentation. So I want to thank the University of Costa Rica, because since I was an student, and right now that I work there as a professional, I have learned a lot, and I have gained a global vision that as food scientist, I could address some of the global challenges that we have in our food system. Also, I would like to thank my family. My grandfather is a local farmer in a small area here in Costa Rica, and he is my favorite source of wisdom. Also, to all the young professionals that I have made along the way, for example, in the Institute of Food Technologies Emerging Leaders Network, I feel that this is very important that young professionals are taking part of important conversations, and they are my source of inspiration on how to make the world a better place. Also, the Institute of Food Technologies, because they have made me part of the IFT Next think tank, which is a comprised group of leaders from multiple disciplines, and we are discussing about future forward topics. It has been a great experience for me. And also to the people, mainly the Costa Rican people, which is the source of inspiration for all that we do, and is the motivation to work, all of us, in the solutions that we have to create. And to Costa and Alacta, which are our local and our Latin America Association of Food Science and Technology. I feel like this is a valuable network of intelligent and hardworking people improving the science of food in Latin America. To close, we all in this room are food players, and as food players, we are food pioneers. And our choices can have tremendous impact on human health, economic growth, and world sustainability. Thank you very much for your attention.